Welcome to the Page One Podcast, a podcast featuring a variety of guests and thought leaders on topics ranging from digital marketing, sales channel strategies, influencer marketing, best-in-class product launches, and all the details about how to accelerate sales. Now, here's your host, Luke Peters.
Thanks for joining us on the Page One Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Peters, CEO of Newer Appliances and Retail Band Digital Strategy Agency. This episode is sponsored by Retail Band, where we can give business owners a blueprint on how to grow their digital sales, either direct to consumer or via channels like Home Depot, Wayfair, Walmart, and many other growing retailers. To learn more, find me on LinkedIn or email me at luke@retailband.com. In this episode, you're going to learn from Jamin Arvig on how to best decide on an Amazon strategy. How do you know which fulfillment methods are best for your business? This is going to be an Amazon deep dive. Jamin is a thought leader in the world of Amazon, and he has spoken on Amazon topics at many industry conferences, in addition to being the chairman of the YPO Amazon Group. Jamin is one of 4 co-founders of the OnlineMerchantsGuild.com, which is a trade association that represents sellers and vendors on Amazon. Jamin is a co-founder of AI Commerce, which powers profitable growth for manufacturers, brands, large resellers that are trying to own the online channel before they're disrupted. And Jamin also founded US Water Filters, the leading online source for water and air filtration products. Jamin, welcome to the Page One Podcast.
Thanks, Luke.
Awesome. So great to have you here. And Jamin, just so the audience kind of learns more about you, just kind of describe maybe a little bit more about what you do. I talked about your companies right there in the intro, but just maybe what you guys do with Amazon, it would be helpful for the audience to get that baseline.
Sure. So AI Commerce provides a lot of different capabilities to succeed on marketplaces. That includes Amazon. It also includes Walmart. It also includes other marketplaces in the US as well as abroad. And those capabilities can include things like strategy, advertising, technology, fulfillment, and other capabilities that people really need to be able to find their differentiators and then put their differentiators to use so they can win on marketplaces.
Okay, perfect. And we're going to dive into some of these questions. And then just a little bit more about your company, just so audience understands scale, maybe, how many employees and maybe how many square feet of warehouse you guys have.
Sure. We passed 100 employees a while ago. We've got a lot of contractors too that help out in different specialized areas. Our first warehouse was in Minnesota, and that's 35,000 square feet. We've got a secondary warehouse, and we're opening up more space on the East Coast and the West Coast right now.
Cool. So in this, just for the audience, I know a lot of us know about Amazon. We're going to go a little bit deeper and really talk about, maybe questions like around why you would choose 1P over 3P. I mean, beyond the obvious, why you'd choose one shipping method over another, maybe how to use both, options of 1P and 3P, and just depending on your product assortment. So we're going to go deep into different Amazon strategies and fulfillment strategies. And why don't we just jump right into this one? So let's start out with fulfillment options for companies. Most companies are using either FBA, like I said, or a 1P relationship. And, for the audience, like if you're shipping something small, FBA may be the go-to. And for my company, New Air, we're shipping larger things. So 1P does make a lot of sense. And 1P meaning, you're working directly with an Amazon buyer, they're buying your product. But what other options are there, Jamin, that, companies may not think of? And in addition, why would they use those other options?
Sure. It may make sense first, and I'll get to that, but it may make sense for me first to just clarify a few things. Depending on who's listening, there might be some confusion. So a lot of people get confused between 1P and 3P and FBA and FBM, and how do these things play together? So they're very, very different things. So 1P, as you just mentioned, Luke, is when you're selling first party. Actually, Amazon is selling first party. They are the retailer. We, as a product owning company, would be selling to Amazon, then they would be selling to the end user. They use a program called Vendor Central, and they are able to, and that's how the vendor, in that case, the product company, is able to push their product. all of those products are owned by Amazon, and so they are owned and held in the Amazon warehouse system. So that's 1P. Then when we're talking about 3P, that's when Amazon sells as a third party, and so we as a product seller are the actual retailer selling through Amazon. And in that case, there are different options where it doesn't have to ship through Amazon's warehouse. If it does ship through Amazon's warehouse, it's considered FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. If it's not shipping through Amazon's warehouse, it's considered, there are other options, but the typical one, as you mentioned, FBM, fulfilled by merchant. So in that case, it's shipping through the merchant, the seller's warehouse. So those are different options. Of course, if you're working with Amazon as in 1P, typically you are selling the product to Amazon and they're owning it and shipping themselves. There are ways where you can drop ship as well, even if you're doing 1P through Vendor Central, and that can be helpful. If Amazon's not picking up some of your products, for example, if you've got a long tail set of products and they don't want to invest in it, but you think you can sell some more, depending on the product category, you can ship them to your warehouse sometime. So that can be helpful, and that can open up some new opportunities. From Amazon's perspective, they get to invest less in inventory, so it can be a win-win.
Yeah.
For third party, there's FBA and FBM, as you're talking about. So FBA, shipping through their warehouse is a go-to standard option, but a lot of times, like you're talking about with a bigger product, heavier product, sometimes other options work better. So it may make sense to use FBM or other options. So you asked what other options there are. Well, there's what we just described, 1P options or vendor dropship as applicable. But for 3P, you can do FBA or FBM, or there's something called seller fulfilled prime, which is something that a lot of people don't know about. But it's like FBM in the sense that you are as a seller shipping the product from your own warehouse directly to the consumer. But it is different in the sense that you actually get to have the prime badge on your product listing. Now, that can be very useful in certain situations, but that's what seller fulfilled prime is. There's another option that has been available for very select sellers and vendors called FBA on-site. And that was and is a classification that gives the seller an actual node on Amazon's fulfillment network. So if you're an FBA on-site seller, your warehouse is actually a node of the FBA network. So that can be interesting as well. And then lastly, there's, of course, 3PL. You can use a third-party logistics firm that can ship whatever products you have and not use your own warehouse and not use Amazon's warehouse. So that's kind of the lay of the land.
Yeah, and there's a lot in there, and I'm not going to regurgitate, but I guess if you're listening, you can rewind that part. If you know it all, that's great, and if you don't, you can rewind. But there's basically breaks it like you did, like you said, it breaks down into two parts. Are you selling third party or are you selling directly to Amazon? We call it Vendor Central, Seller Central, or 1P, 3P, and then from each of those methods or selling options, you're going to have a slightly different shipping options. But Jamin covered it there. But okay, let me ask, we'll go rapid fire here, but quickly, why is there a scenario where if a company is selling small stuff, okay, let's talk about stuff that's going to be able to fit in like a USPS package, maybe an envelope, maybe a little bigger sometimes, really small 8x6x4 box. Like we're talking small stuff overall. Is there any advantage where they would not want to do an FBA shipping method? Like, the on-site, well, maybe it wouldn't be on-site, but it'd be like seller fulfill prime or something like that.
I think you framed the question really well, Luke, which is what is the advantage? Where is there an advantage? And that's the whole reason for this topic that you selected, which is, fulfillment methods that can drive differentiators or advantages. There's lots of ways we can provide capabilities to people, but it's all about providing advantages. And so one of them is through helping pick and manage the right fulfillment method. In this case, to answer your question more directly, there are examples. One of them would be for control. This is the obvious, as I think you were alluding to earlier, the obvious reason why someone would want to ship it out of their own warehouse via FBM. They have much more control. They can know exactly when things are going out. Now, Amazon's warehousing system is quite good, of course, but they do have gaps, and they do make a lot of mistakes. If it's ultra important to your business that you know exactly where a product is, that's one benefit. It can be more cost effective at times too, Luke. So if you're on Seller Central and you've got a good efficient warehouse and you've got a certain method of shipping your products somehow, so you're very effective at that. You can oftentimes ship it way more cost effectively than Amazon. Now they at Amazon have much lower shipping fees, so you need to run the analysis. Is it actually are your savings on being more cost effective shipping it outweighing the cost of the shipping increase when you're shipping it? But sometimes that comes into play. You know, there are of course fewer fees on some products depending on this situation. There could be seasonality issues where you get charged so much in season for storage or overcharges, extra surcharges for storage if things are there too long in Amazon's warehouse, where it does make more sense to stay with products in your own warehouse. But I think you're asking about small and light. Amazon is very good there.
They're good. And the thing is, I mean, you gave a couple good examples. So Control, you could save on cost. There could be a reason you need to track the orders more closely where they are, but it's hard to replicate their next day service, right? So even if a provider is like a 3PL, and even if you get a Prime badge, generally you're going to have like 2-day delivery. But the nice thing, if customers are ordering, I'm guessing you're going to get a higher conversion rate when you're FBA, because if you're getting that next day delivery, I'm guessing you're going to get a slightly higher conversion rate. Is that something that is that true? And B, is that something that can be tracked anyway on Amazon?
It is true. The people with a Prime badge or next day, of course, do have a conversion rate increase. I definitely agree with that. It's hard to track a lot of these things with precision in Amazon, of course, because the data is limited and they closely guard it. But there's a lot of anecdotal evidence of this. And, you know, I think you can also consider a scenario, depending on your situation, there might be no competitors selling your type of product next day or 2-day through Prime. If you really have an interesting, unique product and there isn't a knockoff or a product that is essentially the same, you have more flexibility. You can sell things without the Prime badge sometimes. It was interesting this last year, Luke. I noticed, I'm sure everyone did, that the expectation for shipping time was it's getting towards 2-day and then even 1 day at the early part of this year, 2020. And then when COVID hit, people are then shifting to, again, being okay with a week or 2 weeks or a month or even more sometimes, even on Prime products. So it's about what is the expectation of the customer and what are their alternatives. So that's one more example for you.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I want to, we're trying to get examples here. So we covered the small product one. And again, it looks like FBA is hard to beat, but there could be options to go elsewhere. Now let's go with the bigger box. Let's call it the 25 to 100 pound weight or DIM. My company falls in that category. A lot of other companies do. I don't want to turn this into a complex math equation, Jamin, because I'm sure there are factors on that, but let me just talk. Let me set the ground here. So with the larger product, like when you're working directly with Amazon, you obviously lose control, but the nice part is they're buying inventory. They're owning your inventory. And you're going to lose some price control. So that's a major thing you're giving up because they're going to discount that to whatever they need to discount it.
And you're talking 1P. Luke, right?
We're talking 1P.
Yep.
So this is for anybody listening who's got a little bit of a larger product. It doesn't always fit into FBA. It seems like the requirements have gotten tighter and smaller for FBA. So this is a lot of people. Now you want to look at, okay, should you stick with the 1P or do you want to go to 3P? What are the main equations you got to do to figure out if that 3P is going to work? And is it as cost effective or is it going to end up costing you more in the end? Because I think you got to pay at least 15% to Amazon on your Seller Central side, or depending on your category. And then you got to pay for the shipping. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there's anything else you got to pay for. Like, what do you look at as if you want to convert from a 1P to a 3P? What are like the different things you got to take into account?
Yeah, mathematically, you covered some of it. There's the 15% commission to Amazon. typically for most products at most prices, but that's the most standard one. There's the shipping costs, storage costs, fulfillment costs that you're paying Amazon. Any surcharges, they get you, they nickel and dime you a lot on fees with FBA. So there's a lot you end up paying Amazon, depending on the category and the product attributes. I mean, you can be paying not just 15%, but then it increases really to 30%, just between 30 and 50%, maybe more in a lot of instances. So it is a real number. So some people look at 3P, if they're on 1P currently, and they say, wow, that price is way better. Let's just move over there. But there are these expenses that you talk about to keep people wary. Now, typically, it does still create more margin on the 3P side. That is more common than not.
Why is that though? Where are you getting the extra margin versus the 1P side?
Well, if you're selling a refrigerator or a water filter or whatever it is to Amazon, the price might be $80 to them, and then they're marking it up and selling for whatever they're selling, $150. And so if you're selling directly for $150 to the Amazon, to the person buying on Amazon, then you'll have that extra margin to work with.
Yep. Makes sense. And then anything else? So we're talking about bigger products. So
you bring up math, and math is good, and we talked about that. I mean, the math has to work. So you need a special analysis for any of these situations. But there's a lot more than math too for this. There's strategy and branding and long-term control issues. There's lots that go into this equation. So there's a lot of people that just cannot stand being on 1P because they can't control the content as much as they want. They can't control the pricing at all. They've got lots of channel conflict or channel considerations anyway, and they can't afford to have a price that they can't control on Amazon. So that in some cases, it's just impossible for a company to do 1P because of their company vision or strategy or brand guidelines. So there's branding issues that go into this too. And then there's also things to think about as to, where is Amazon going next? Can we skate to where the puck is going instead of where it was? What is their 1P program and 3P program going to look like in 5 years from now? And as I'm sure a lot of people remember reading about or experiencing in a difficult way, a year and a half ago, there was a lot of challenge on this with a lot of people missing orders for a period of time from 1P. And there was a lot of controversy, and a lot of people thought Amazon was shutting down 1P for anyone under 5 million or 10 million or some arbitrary reason. And so there wasn't maybe as much controversy as as a lot of people expected there really was behind the scenes. But the truth is, Amazon would like to have 1P for certain strategic SKUs. For a lot of SKUs that are not strategic to them to have on 1P, they prefer to have them on 3P. And 3P is growing faster than 1P for them. And, they don't mind that. It's highly, highly profitable with variable revenue and variable expenses in a big part versus them owning inventory. So I think we need to also think about just long term. Is our product going to be one, our brand going to be one that Amazon wants to have on 1P in 2 years? If not, we should think about being decisive and strongly considering 3P.
Yeah, that's a good, huge thing to bring up. So it's not just math, it's not just dollars and cents, but there's that strategy. What do you think about this, though, Jamin? So a lot of people here will have a 1P vendor central direct connection with their buyer. They got a good relationship. By the way, it's hard to walk away from those because Amazon has some internal rules that they'll bring up about that. Do you think, because I do get the feeling that if you are strong 1P and they're stocking your product, that there's something else in the algorithm that maybe helps you sell more. Maybe it ranks better if they got a bunch of inventory, or maybe the buyer has some levers they can pull. What's your take on that? Versus if you're a 3P. So in other words, if you have a 1P, do you risk losing some sales velocity potentially if you lose that great relationship you might have?
It's a good question. I think, I guess you open up a lot of different issues there. Maybe starting with the buyer issue. So depending on the category, you've got certain buyers or account managers that are available, and you've got different levels of those within Amazon. So and they're based typically on how much revenue you have with Amazon. So of course, if you do a lot more with Amazon, you get more attention, and you can have these vendor account managers helping you. So if you've got that in your corner, it can help in a big way. However, as I'm sure you know, Amazon has a lot of turnover with employees moving around quickly. And these buyers are very, very busy, extremely busy. They have, way more on their plate than they can really, effectively manage. And so they need to be super smart and carefully prioritize how they spend their time. And that very well, it could mean they never look at your brand, or they get on a call once in a while with you, and then they never think of your brand again. And then you get a new buyer soon after that, and you've got to develop a relationship and history and all these things again. So it's not as much of a given as one might think. I think a lot of brands, we hear this a lot actually. People come to us and say, "Hey, Amazon reached out to us; they want to sell our brand," and it's easy for that to be flattering and think, "Wow, that's great! Amazon wants me. They came to me. I didn't go to them." But they're pretty good at mass emails, and it doesn't mean that they're going to be assigning huge account representatives to you and advocating for you over all of your competitors on Amazon. So it's just something to watch for. But it's just the reality of how the system works. So that's a little about buyers. But in terms of whether there's a bump on Amazon, if you're 1P versus 3P, there's lots of controversy there, of course, and whether there truly is a Chinese wall between 1P and 3P at Amazon. And, they try to do a good job with that at Amazon. And I think they've made a few mistakes that they've owned up to, where that Chinese wall has had some leakage, I guess, between that, where there have been some examples of what you're talking about, but it's pretty hard to prove that. Now, Prime, the Prime badge, there's a huge known, proven direct correlation to the rankings and the Prime badge. If you're selling 1P, and you've got a Prime badge, you'll definitely do better. But it could be just because you've got a Prime badge. So it's one thing to watch out for. There are examples where Amazon is going in and helping 1P considerably. And I don't know. I don't think it's always a Chinese wall issue. I think they choose from time to time what categories are important to them and how they're going to spend. And we've tracked this sometimes where it shows their spending on Google Ads, for example, skyrockets in a category for a period of time, and then it falls later on, and then it skyrockets again. And so when they're doing this and trying to drive products or drive traffic to a product they are selling, or an Amazon Basics product, for example, it does help. It does help those products more than a 3P product in those examples.
Great. Okay, cool. So, for the audience, we ran through a bunch of different options there with 1P, 3P, Vendor Central, Seller Central, fulfillment methods. And, the main thing I would leave everybody with is like the key point that Jamin talked about there was, obviously we all know this, you got to have that Prime badge. And there are ways to get that with 3PLs who can offer that service and kind of, have a distributed warehouse network. So you're not stuck in 1P only. If your products are big, you can find this other option. But there's complications along the way. So what we want to do is we're going to move into another area where I'm going to kind of challenge Jamin, and he's going to put out his Amazon recipe. And so this is about growing your sales on Amazon. Before I go there though, Jamin, looking at the online sales and just thinking of a pie chart and looking where Amazon is, they got a huge slice of that. I don't know if they're like 50% now of online sales are getting huge, and others are growing too. You hear about great success stories with other retailers, but they don't seem to be growing as strong as Amazon. Just before we move on to the next picture, do you have the next question? Do you have like a prediction or forecast on where Amazon's going to be in 5 or 10 years? Are they going to have, even a bigger slice of this, or is a competitor going to gain enough ground like a Walmart to kind of stop Amazon from taking a bigger share of the pie?
Well, I think it's good for the consumer, and probably good for Amazon too, in a way, for there to be more competition. But Amazon just has such an enormous advantage. I see it continuing, Luke. I think Amazon's done a tremendous job. You've probably been tracking Amazon's GMV compared to Walmart's revenue for years, as I have, and they're finally approaching it. So they're going to be a bigger revenue-wise than really their growth in GMV versus Walmart in revenue. And when you look at the others out there, I mean, they're finally making some strong efforts, but they have, I think, as Buffett put it, never give Jeff Bezos a 10-year head start. That's a bad idea.
Yep.
So I see, and it's so curious to a lot of us watching why that was the case. Walmart had these tremendous assets with all these retail stores and locations that can be distribution centers. They've got huge differentiators that they could have leveraged against Amazon at any time. You've got Google that has all the traffic. They could have made a Google Shop, Google Store, Google Express. I mean, they've dabbled with some things, but they could have required a login. They could have required certain things that could have shifted the model. So it's very curious, but we are where we are, and it seems unlikely that Amazon's going to give up ground from what I can tell in the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's such an interesting conversation, and I would agree with you. And you just look where they are in technology, and you look at how they are compared to other retailers that are catching up. And there's a couple of really, really good ones, Wayfair and Home Depot and stuff, but still Amazon, I think that's a funny quote, never give Jeff Bezos a 10-year lead. And that's literally what's happened. I remember I was at a dinner, I think it was with one of an agency partner. This is probably like 10 years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood. Might have been at an internet retailer in Chicago many years ago. And I was at this dinner and this investor, and I think the purpose was to get everybody in a room so investors could ask questions about Amazon, something like that. And this investor's like, well, they don't make any money. Why would I invest in them? I'm like, well, who else are you going to invest in online at the time? Yep. And I wish I would have kept it all in right at that point. It's too easy to buy and sell, but I think they're probably like $70 or something. It's a crazy story.
It would have been okay.
Yeah, that would have worked out better. All right, cool. So let's jump into this question. All right. So let me set the stage for everybody listening here. So what we're going to talk about is how you can grow on Amazon, but it's going to be really focused into one main question. And one thing I was sharing with Jamin pre-call is that what can be frustrating, with working with other Amazon experts, is that how to grow on Amazon always boils down to two things: spend more money on AMS or whatever they're calling it now. So spend more money on advertising to get better ranking, and lower your price or promo somehow to get more sales. And that's going to drive your velocity, and that's going to drive your ranking, as a major part of their algorithm. But not everybody wants to or can continue to spend even more money on those things and lose money on the sale price, because then your margins erode. And some people will say, okay, well, do it for a month, get your ranking, and then back off. And I think that could be a good strategy. So, okay, you're not going to make a lot of profit, say, for a certain period of time, and then you can back off and be more profitable. But I guess the challenge here for Jamin, hopefully the audience finds this helpful, is what are specific actions, brands can take to sell more and rank better that don't involve increasing ad spend and lowering prices. So we can call this the Amazon recipe. So with that long introduction, I'll hand it to you.
Well, I wasn't prepared for this, but it's a great question, and I'll probably give a very frustrating answer, which we all look for this, silver bullet. Where's that button in Seller Central or Vendor Central we can push and get our product to the top? And it's really a set of lots and lots of little things that can get us there. And even with those, we have to first look at what we're selling. So when I speak on the secrets of success on Amazon and the keys to success, I always start with the product, and that has nothing to do with the marketing of anything. But if we don't have a good product, we can't even begin. some people try 10 different things and hire and fire agencies, and they get so frustrated because they can't sell the product, but maybe people don't want the product. And so the product needs to be good, of course. It needs to be worthy of reviews. There needs to be a market for it. So those types of things can be evaluated through strategy, analytics, and understanding, is there a market for it, for this product versus a different product? Where should we spend our time? Should we cut this product and create a new product? What are customers actually looking for? So I think finding the right products is step one. And then after you've got a product where there is really some differentiator that people care about, you need to, once there's a value prop, I should say, that people want, there's a market for it. You need to make sure there's a differentiator. So a few differentiator examples are IP. If you've got some patent protected thing that no one else has, that's great. That's going to help. Of course, there's issues with enforcing that anywhere in the world, especially on marketplaces. It can help a great deal. Another example is brands. If you've got a lot of brand horsepower, whether it's your brand or a licensed brand or an exclusive representation deal you have for a brand, that can be great too. Now you've got some more to use as leverage. Another big thing is a differentiator in supply chain and having the best cost. A lot of people talk about best price, but it's really the cost where there's a differentiator. So if you can source or manufacture a product at a lower cost than anyone else, you will win unless you've got very unintelligent, long-term unintelligent competitors or folks that really can afford to have a loss leader for some business model reason that you don't know about. But typically on Amazon, you're dealing with a one and out type customer for most products. And if that's the case, you need to have the lowest cost possible. If you got the lowest cost, now you can reinvest the margin that the other people don't have into advertising or into a lower price or discount or coupon, or you can reinvest it into your bank account. And so all of these things allow you to win. So having a low cost supply chain is critical. And Amazon, one of Bezos's quotes is, "Their margin is my opportunity." And we all have to, as sellers and vendors on Amazon, we all have to have that same mindset and figure out how we can operate more efficiently. We have a lower cost supply chain. Every penny helps. And efficiencies in our operations. How can we tighten that up with technology or automation or streamlining or direct shipping, or how can we really make sure that we're getting all we can to lower the cost in the supply chain? So I think those differentiators are a big deal.
So those are great points. And, start with a good product, obviously have a differentiator, supply chain, and differentiator is one that I think everybody can work to improve. But what about marketing efforts? So, companies are going and interviewing agencies, or they're even interviewing staff to bring on for Amazon. Let's assume all of these things are taken care of, and I know every company can improve on them, but let's assume, hey, companies have worked hard to find low-cost supplier, et cetera, et cetera. How important are things like doing proper keyword research, certain types of images, different types of descriptions? How important are those things? And besides those things, what other on-page things should people be focused on?
Yeah, they're critical too. And a lot of these things become table stakes. We need to do all of the above. It's all about differentiators. So first we were talking about product differentiators, and now you're talking about marketing differentiators. And we'll talk about that. We can also talk about things like technology differentiators and one of the main topics of today, fulfillment differentiators. So if you have all of these things, you're going to really be setting yourself up for success. For marketing differentiators, some of the product things we already talked about cover this too. You need to make sure you're finding the right product that has the right attributes to talk about. And once you've got that, you need to talk about those attributes in the right way. And you need to understand who is your audience from a market perspective, who is looking for this and searching for this solution to their problem. And what are their characteristics, and how are they? And can we target that demo in certain ways with Amazon's ad programs or retargeting or whatever it might be? As far as the things like on page that you're talking about with keyword research and titles and description and images, once we know the customer and the problem we're solving for, we can get into what is the verbiage, what are the keywords, what's the content that we need to appeal to, and how are people searching for this solution. And once we have that, now we can go after the keywords and be really mindful of those things. We can do it in a way that is speaking more to the benefits than the features. So there are ways to drive traffic with the content by picking the right keywords, for example, and there are ways to drive conversion rate based on how the content is written. For example, talking more about benefits versus features. So there's a lot that can be done on page. There's a lot that can be done before that to identify the traffic and prioritize traffic, and then of course to scale the traffic too. There's all the different programs that Amazon offers today, and hopefully, you can be with an agency or an account or whatever it is that has beta access to a lot of the latest and greatest. It's always good to be in on the new things when they get launched. Typically, the cost to use the new programs is much less than it is the mature program. So those are a few examples on the marketing side.
Those are great. And why don't we finish this up and just we can wrap this conversation up by, it'd be great to hear from your perspective, because you talked about so many different things there, but is there a couple of examples that stand out, maybe two areas that when you take over customer accounts, you always find these areas, are mismanaged, or, just that there's a lot of low hanging fruit? Is it on the marketing and image side? Is it on like your fulfillment side? Like, where are you finding the gains on these accounts typically? I think just, hearing those specifics would also be a great way to wrap this up.
Well, there's a lot. It's hard to think about just one. But since our topic was more fulfillment related, I can speak to that one as an example. And we talked about this very briefly earlier on, but if people are in certain product categories and have products with certain attributes, where they can benefit from having a Prime badge, which is most everyone can benefit from having a Prime badge, but they're challenged with all the costs and inefficiencies and delays and issues with FBA and inventory carrying costs. There's a lot that goes into that. So if some of those things are challenges, there's a lot of times when the seller fulfilled Prime can be a breakthrough. And unfortunately, Seller Fulfilled Prime was paused, as I mentioned, close to 2 years ago for new entrants to qualify. But if you can get on a Seller Fulfilled Prime account, and we have these, we do this, then you can have some of these benefits, and you can get a Prime badge, even though you're not shipping to your Amazon's network. And as many people saw this year, there are constraints on Amazon's FBA network. And so there might be delays on getting products in the door to them. There might be suspensions for periods of time in situations like we've had this year. There's a lot of challenges. And as they scale, they're going to continue to scale very, very quickly. Their warehousing system does have constraints, and it does break from time to time. So if you want to make sure you're Prime, that can be a pretty big breakthrough, since Prime badging is so critical to the ranking algorithm.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. And Fulfill by Merchant, like if you're not getting that Prime, or maybe you're getting it locally, not over the whole country, it is a big drop off from always, having that Prime badge. So I think bringing up Seller Fulfilled Prime is a good one. And quickly, Jamin, just for my knowledge, if a 3PL doesn't have Seller Fulfilled Prime, like as you mentioned, they stopped giving away those badges a couple years ago. How do they access Prime? Is there another Prime service that they utilize, or just so we understand all the acronyms here?
We kind of fell into it, honestly, with Seller Fulfilled Prime. So we got the certification for Seller Fulfilled Prime to use for our own selling accounts and for those that we're working with. We didn't know at the time they were going to be shutting it down or pausing it. It seems like it's kind of an indefinite suspension at this point. So, but we've got that, and so now we can use it. And so, to answer your question, I think more directly, the certification is attached to the account, not to a company. It's attached to the Amazon account.
So what do 3PLs offer that? Do they have are there other Amazon services or acronyms, where they're able to ship with a Prime badge, or do they, with a 3PL, do you have to ship under their Amazon account to get that?
Yeah, the vast majority of Amazon 3PLs do not do this. They do not have the Prime badge. They might say they support it and they have seller fulfilled Prime happening, but the vast majority of them are doing that because someone might have had a seller fulfilled Prime account years ago, and that account is then managed by the 3PL company. So that is one common instance. For us, we let people sell under our account, and so that's the way that's done logistically.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's really good insight and a great way to finish off. And quickly, I'd love to I read a lot of books. You actually had sent me a couple months ago a great PDF with like the top 52 rated business books. I think it's from like your EO group or something like that, or YPO group. Mm-hmm. But is there, just for the audience, is there a book that stands out? Maybe a book you think is like the best business book, and if not, maybe some sort of business leader that you follow. A
couple that I saw years ago that I love and I highly recommend to anyone that hasn't heard of these. One is called Traction.
Yeah, it's a great book.
And one is called Scaling Up.
Yep, both good books.
Real quickly, for those that haven't heard of these, Traction is about a management operating system called the Entrepreneurial operating system. And it just puts into place a lot of very, very simple processes and systems you need to run your company. And we all have processes and systems to run our companies, but this, they've really identified and fine-tuned a lot of these very well. Another system, very, very similar, is Scaling Up, based on Rockefeller habits. And so these things are so helpful. And if companies implement these from top to, from all parts of the organization, there's just huge business evolution and huge business learning from everyone in the organization. And I've talked to many, many people that use these systems. I don't think I've ever heard regrets. I think I've also heard people that say that was a game changer for us. And it has been for our businesses as well.
Those are great choices. Yeah. And highly recommend if the audience, even if you've heard of them, if you haven't implemented them, they are total game changers. Wow. Listen, a lot of great information. Enjoyed the talk today, Jamin. How can listeners find more about you or AI Commerce?
AI Commerce has a very simple site. You can contact folks through that site. If you want to connect with me, you can email me the letter J at AICommerce.com, J at AICommerce.com, or find me on LinkedIn, Jamin Arvig.
Awesome. And we'll have all this in the show notes. And Jamin, really appreciate you again for joining me on the Page One podcast, and hope everybody enjoyed the interview today. Really appreciate your reviews on iTunes, if you guys can leave one there, and hope you join us for the next interview.
Thanks for listening to the Page One podcast with Luke Peters. If you enjoyed this episode, please help us out by leaving us a rating on iTunes. Want to double your online sales? Check out www.retailband.com. And don't forget to join us next week with our next amazing guest.